Time being now 5:06. Going to call the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District, November 20th at 5 o'clock. If we could do a roll call, please, electronically. And we are all present. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance. Director Hernandez, would you read us?
I'd be happy to. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
Yep. President Martin?
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Public comment. What I'm looking for right now.
Would you like a motion to?
I need a motion to adopt the agenda for the board meeting.
I'd like to do that, thank you.
Please do. Thank you.
I'll second that.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So done. Public comment. I have one speaker. Mr. Hunsaker.
Mike Hunsaker, speaking as president of the Twin Oaks Valley Property Owners Association. As I suspect more than a few of you know, that SB 330 is now the law of the land. It will become effective January 1st, 2020. And one of the things it does is it freezes capacity fees as of January 1st. After years of delay, you have passed new capacity fees to be effective on January 2nd. This becomes a real serious issue as to what is the status of those capacity fees. Will the new ones, long overdue, be charged properly to our new developments? Will they not be? This poses quite a big issue as to the January 1st and the January 2nd close proximity is going to be obviously an aggravating issue for many citizens. At the very least, this should be carefully resolved, and anything that is done to make the new fees defensible should be done. But it appears the easiest thing to do is to revise the effectivity date to December 31st. I've supplied Diane with a copy of SB 330, and I hope we get this resolved quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Hunsaker.
Just a quick question for legal counsel. Hey Jim, can you give us like the 15-second overview of this Senate bill? Maybe
Yeah.
20.
20, it'll probably be 5. It's essentially a housing bill. I would have to look at the details to see if what Mr. Hunsaker is asserting is accurate relative to the freeze on capacity fees.
Could you look into that
Yeah.
ahead of the next meeting and then come prepared to give us an
I certainly
update?
will. I'm typing something out as he was speaking.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Bridget Anderson is going to introduce us to a new employee.
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Susan Bowman. She joined the district on November 18th as our new asset management supervisor. This position is a new one. It was created and approved in this year's budget. Susan comes to us from the city of San Diego, where she worked for 30 years in various capacities, including asset management. In her free time, she enjoys traveling, camping, and spending time with her husband and 2 daughters.
Nice.
Good evening, thank you. Thank you
Welcome.
very much.
Yeah, welcome.
Any questions?
Is it a shorter commute, at least, San Diego, San Marcos?
So I live in Ramona, so
Oh,
it's.
we're closer.
As I've always said, it's a commute no matter where you go unless you're staying in Ramona. So it's actually a tad closer, yes.
I have a question for you, because
Certainly.
the city of San Diego is not really known for its asset management. Probably doesn't have the money, I don't know. But did you see a problem while you were there?
No, actually, in the Public Utilities Department, which is water and wastewater, asset management has been something that they've been slowly building on. The way that it's been approached is really by bringing together all the data sources, things that you have in maintenance management systems, GIS systems, engineering records, et cetera, and really trying to build that together. The city had recently implemented a very large SAP-based system to bring all that data together and to implement advanced capital improvement planning. That is an area that they had some improvements to be made. So over the last 5 years, they've put in a concerted effort to really improve the way that they're looking at their overall asset
Great, thank
management.
you. We're very happy to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome
Pleased to
aboard.
be. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, moving on to the consent calendar. Need a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Action items, we're gonna go right to Ryan. All right, 2.1, acceptance of Rock Springs Sewer Replacement Project.
Thank you, President Martin. Good evening, Board of Directors. I'm here with the acceptance of the Rock Springs Sewer Replacement Project. As many of you are probably already familiar, the project corridor begins at roughly the intersection of Rock Springs Road, Bennett Avenue, and runs west through a greenbelt area to an existing pipeline in Rock Springs Road at Lancer Avenue. The board approved a design contract to IEC back in July of 2010. IEC and staff finalized the bid documents in May 2018. The board awarded a contract to Burtech Pipeline for roughly $2.163 million in August of 2018. And construction began on October 19th of 2018. Project was substantially completed on August 16th, 2019. And breakdown of the fiscal impact is before you on page 2 for your review, which resulted in a budget surplus of just over $40,000. Staff recommends that the board accept the project as complete and authorize the filing of a notice of completion and release the retention of funds to the contractor following the 60-day notice period.
Okay, questions?
Just have a
Director Evans?
Thank you. I just wanted to compliment you on the change order staying at 2.9%. That's excellent, according to what it says on page 54.
That's correct. We had a total of 34 change orders.
That's a lot.
Amounting to $62,600. And that was just shy of 3% of the original contract amount.
Our staff seems to do a pretty good job with contracts that way, so I wanted to say thank you, and thank you for the budget surplus. And I wish the community itself could realize how long it took us to do this, 9 years plus, but we got it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director Hernandez?
The project finished, you said, sometime in August, and here we are, late November. I suspect the contractor's chomping at the bit. Can you tell me why it's taken so long to finally get it approved?
Its majority is a resolution of final punch list items and coordination with some ongoing issues that we had to resolve with the local HOA. We have since resolved those issues and done some negotiations, and we are now in a position where we're ready to release retention and call for NOC.
Okay.
Director
Also,
Snella?
just by coincidence, the contractor chose to plant seed instead of using sod to replant, which was his option, but the grass had to grow, so we were literally waiting for the grass to grow.
Okay.
Jeez. And don't they typically plant seed in November? That's what my gardener just told me recently.
Yeah, they planted seed in August.
It's on sale in November.
I think,
Go ahead, Director.
I think I might have commented on this before when you were giving us an update back in August, but as you can see from the picture here, this is a significant project, and it goes right through the community there, and literally through, not through people's backyards, but right on the other side of their backyards and through their green belt space and all of that. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of disruption potentially, and kudos to everybody involved with the project, because to my knowledge, there's been very little or no negative feedback. We certainly haven't had anybody show up at a meeting and say, wait, what's going on? And that's tough to do when you got this kind of project that's going through a community. So good job to everybody.
Thank you.
I have one question. Do we know of anybody that had a problem with our contractor? Other than waiting for the grass to grow?
I know one.
I'll defer to James.
During the big rains last year, we did have a tree fall and hit portion of a house roof. The board may recall that. And that, I think, is either resolved or still in the process of being resolved. Besides that, we had a few dust complaints during construction, but really minor. And if you may recall from the year-end update, we showed those before and after pictures with the new road being all blacktop. The community was really happy with that.
How's the tree being resolved, by the contractor or by us?
It was being resolved by the contractor primarily, but it was our design, and we actually had an arborist go out there. I don't know if there's a final resolution or if there was a claim that was ever submitted, so, at this point. But if there's a claim that's submitted, then the board will end up seeing that at some point.
Thank you. Great job. Great job done by all. Thank you very much. Need a motion?
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much. 2.2, EWA revised established mounted document amendment. Mr. Gentleman?
I'll take that one. So the board's aware that Vallecitos is one of 6 member agencies of the Encina Wastewater Authority, and Encina provides regional wastewater treatment and disposal services. EWA was created under a document called the Establishment Document, very creative, and that served as the joint exercise of powers agreement to operate the Encina joint system. Based on previous revisions, that document is now known as the Revised Establishment Document. The 6 member agencies are jointly responsible for all the costs associated with EWA based on their ownership percentage and their demands that they place on the system. And all those costs, including the personnel costs, are allocated to those member agencies. Recently, just last year, there was a new Assembly Bill, Assembly Bill 1912, became effective January 1st of this year, and it requires member agencies to be jointly liable for all the retirement obligations of employees that work for Joint Powers Authority agencies. So what needs to happen is the revised establishment document needs to be amended to reflect the wording of Assembly Bill 1912, and that's what you see before you. There's no financial impacts to Vallecitos. We are already responsible for it. EWA already allocates those costs. We just need to make some minor corrections to the revised establishment document to reflect the passage of AB 1912. There were some minor technical corrections that were made in the document as well, but they were like correcting grammar and correcting spelling, but most of it had to focus on the liability for the retirement costs. The Encina Board and their Joint Advisory Committee considered this item at their meeting on November 13th, and they recommended forwarding it to all of the member agencies for their approval. It needs the approval of all 6 member agencies, and that's what's before you tonight. So we're looking for the approval of the changes to the revised establishment document.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Director?
Thank you. I noticed in here it says we are paid according to our ownership shares, and I'm sure I should know this, but just out of curiosity, what is our ownership share of EWA, and how does that compare to the other 5?
I think we're at around 22.4% for our ownership share. We're slightly smaller than Vista and Carlsbad, so we're number 3 in terms of ownership percentage. But we're all pretty close, the 3 of us.
Okay, thank you. Did you need us to move for approval?
We do have a speaker, though.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Ms. Hunsaker, the floor is yours. Keep it rural.
We're trying.
I have just a question. We have two ownership stakes, I believe, one in solids treatment and another in liquid treatment. Is the 22 or 24% a blended average? Is that covered in the agreement? And there is some talk of turning that facility into a waste treatment facility to reclaim or recycle water. Will that cover those eventualities? Thank you.
General Manager, do you have an answer to the 23.8% of?
Yeah, so our share is kind of a blended average, is basically the overall demands that we place on there when you look at both the solids and the liquids treatment. The speaker is correct, there are plans in the future, or he was considering maybe using their facility and the output of their facility to create potable reuse water. What would need to be done going forward from that has not yet been determined. So if they need to add staff, for example, to operate a potable reuse facility, that would need to be part of a revised agreement at that point in time.
As well as the cost of doing something like that.
Correct.
Which is years down the road.
Years down the road, and it would need approval of all the member agencies.
Right. Thank you. All right. Glenn, again, 2.3, cast ballot up to 8 eligible nominees for the local agency formation commission. Did we approve that? So we need a motion.
I move for approval of staff's recommendation.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Now we'll go to item 2.3.
Diane, can you bring up the list from that? Oh. So the item before the board right now is the opportunity to cast ballots for nominees for the LAFCO Special District Advisory Committee. There's 16 members on the committee. There's 8 vacant seats. They serve 4-year terms, and a nominating committee identified 11 candidates. Then they're listed on the page in front of you. And just today, we got a letter that showed that Mr. Williamson at the top is no longer eligible. He used to be the general manager for UEMA. He's no longer employed by UEMA, and you have to be a member on the member agency to be eligible. So he's no longer eligible. So there's 10 remaining nominees, and each district, us being one of them, can vote for 8 of the 10 that you see in front of you. You don't have to vote for 8. You don't have to vote for any, and you can do write-ins if you want. If you do write-ins, the total still has to be 8, though. So with that, just looking for board direction, the ballot is due January 6th.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would recommend supporting Jack Beebe, Albert Liu, Kimberly Thorner, and Tom Kennedy. I don't know the other candidates, but I know of them.
I agree with all of those, but I'd also like to add Mark Robach as well.
I'm sorry, I missed the first one you said, just the reruns?
So we have the 5 people, the incumbents, and adding Albert Lau, the new Santa Fe Irrigation District. Is that the 6 that I see?
Yeah.
So those 6, unless someone has an addition?
I didn't hear Mr. Thomas included in the original list. Robert
Yes.
Thomas, was he?
Well, yeah,
Okay.
Robert Thomas.
Okay.
All the incumbents with the add of Albert C. Lau. Everyone concur?
Yes.
Concur? Everyone concurs, thank you. Moving on to reports. General Manager's report.
All right, I got 5. I'll try to make them quick. A few are just a heads up. So the city of San Marcos is going to be having a groundbreaking ceremony for their San Marcos Creek project, and that consists of the bridges over the creek on Bent and Via Veracruz. They'll be widening Discovery and heightening Discovery Street. They'll build a creek promenade. There'll be a lot of utility relocations that will affect us. The event, though, this is just about the event. The event is Wednesday, December 11th from 10 to 11 o'clock. They don't have a location yet. They just sent out a save the date. So if the board's interested in attending and you're all invited, It's December 11th from 10 to 11, and we'll get back with you with more details as they become available. Another kind of a notice of upcoming event, you may recall that there's a development that was scheduled to occur called, escaping me, High Point. And their pipelines have been in the ground for a while. They want us to accept the pipes, and we said it would only be contingent upon a successful condition assessment. So they're about to do the condition assessment, and that's scheduled for December 4th through the 9th. So the board members are welcome to come out there. Most of that conflicts with the Aqua event in San Diego. So we'll work with the developer to make sure that we let the board know the best time to go out there and take a look at this technology.
Quick question on that?
Yeah.
Who's doing the testing and who's paying them to do the testing?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So there's no district money in this at all. The developer, prospective developer is paying for all the inspection. They're going to dig the access pits, they're going to launch the tool, they're going to analyze the data, they're going to help us correlate the data. So if they put this inspection tool through a pipeline and it shows us that they think there's a weak spot on a pipe, we're going to ask them to dig at that location and verify, is there really a weak spot at that point like the technology shows? So although we don't have any stake in this specific example, this is a technology that we're very interested in, and we'll probably use the exact same technology when we go forward with district pipeline condition assessment. So it's really a great opportunity for us to learn at the very beginning stage of how this technology works with no cost or exposure to us.
Does that mean we're going to have one of our supervisors as a watchdog? Because if they're being paid by the company that hired them to do it.
Yeah, so James can address
I just see a conflict.
Right, James can address the specifics of the test.
President Martin, that was actually our direct concern too. So we actually are contracting through our as-needed for the actual contractor, the tool. They hired the contractor to dig the pits, but the actual company, which is Pika, that actually has the tool that does the analysis, is a contract through us. We made sure that we received a $130,000 deposit, which covered all of the costs for Pika, for their proposal, plus our time. So it's basically about $35,000 in staff time, including the overhead, plus all their direct costs. So we didn't move forward until we had money in hand from deposit. They gave us half the deposit, and it took them like 6 or 8 months to give us the other half, and we refused to move forward until we had all the money. So we were afraid of the conflict of interest, so we wanted to control the contract, and we refused to move forward until we had the money in hand.
Great job as always, staff.
Right. Ready for the next one?
Yes, sir.
So this is something we don't normally do. We're going to announce a movie opening. So
Oh.
yes, and I know Director Hernandez is a big movie buff.
You're ready.
So there's a movie opening at theaters this Friday, and it's called Dark Waters. And this will be of interest, I think, to the customers of Vallecitos and all water districts. So the film focuses on a family of substances in drinking water called PFAS, and it stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. It's a whole host, and Ed can fill in the gaps here, but it's dozens, if not hundreds, of chemical compounds that get in the water system are hard to get out. We know it's not a problem in Vallecitos right now, but it is a problem. This family of chemicals is a problem in other water systems. They tend to be more in groundwater, but we don't have a problem here. The movie is kind of like an Aaron Brockovich movie, I think. It's where an attorney is going to take on DuPont for their role in putting this. So it's fictional, I believe. I haven't seen the movie. I believe it's fictional, but it's going to raise concerns by our customers. So I just want the board to know that I'll go on record here saying our water is safe. We've put information on our website, and we put links on our website for anybody that's interested to go get more information. But I just want to make sure the board and the community knows that there's a movie coming out that may be of interest to them.
I just got one thing to say. I remember I worked many years ago, 1978, at a drive-in theater on the Jersey Shore, and Jaws opened. And that was fictional.
Yep.
Nobody went in the water. So it would be very interesting to see how this fiction turns out and how many calls we get from people. Interesting. Thank you. Yes.
And I appreciate, Glenn, that you and our team are getting in front of this, but I also assume they're going to be putting some additional information out, like on our social media platforms when the time comes, to just really drive home that this does not impact our water here locally.
Right, yeah, we'll make sure we do that. And just so you know, it's not just in general release, it's being released in San Marcos too. It's going to be at the San Marcos Theaters starting maybe next week, maybe not Friday.
All right. Director Hernandez?
I would be happy to pull out my SAG card and critique the movie if I can get a box of popcorn out of it.
What? Always an angle, Jim. I love it.
Always it.
I love it.
If there's no more questions or comments on that one, I'll move on to the next one. Just a reminder that there's the Fall Aqua Conference in San Diego from December 3rd through the 6th. It's a great opportunity for the board members to get some required training. So whether it's for ethics or sexual harassment, I think they'll have sessions for both. I'll be sending out a list to let all the directors know when your expiration is, so we'll try to coordinate that for you. And due to the conference, the December 4th meeting will be canceled because there'll be a conflict with that conference and our regularly scheduled board meeting. And that's all I have, other than to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. This is the last meeting before Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Director Hernandez.
If we find that we have to do something special relative to our capacity fees, you'll let us know in time so we can put a special meeting together?
Absolutely. We'll have a meeting on December 11th if we need to address any issues like that.
Okay.
Do we still have that meeting scheduled?
So it's not scheduled yet, so that'll be a special meeting because it's not on the first or third Wednesday. So we'll put out a cancellation notice for the December 4th meeting. We'll put out a meeting notice for a special meeting on December 11th. And right now, we haven't made a decision about the December 18th meeting. Often it's canceled, but I think we conducted it last year because there was business that needed to be done. So
It's far enough away from the holiday, I think.
no decision has been made. I hear what you're saying. It's not like Christmas Eve.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, District Legal Counsel.
So first, we will look at the bill specifically. I did a quick review, but I don't think it's applicable as it's housing related and dealing with approval that would impact affordable housing, which has been a big push by the governor. There was an Assembly bill, adopted Assembly Bill 5, which potentially affects us in terms of hiring independent contractors and those types of employees. It's adopted a more streamlined rule in terms of what are considered independent contractors for us. I know some water districts have got into issues relative to hiring people as independent contractors, such as IT folks, et cetera. It lays out a 3-step process. They have to be independent. They can't be taking direction from us and, having to show up in offices and other types of things. So that could impact some positions. Probably not, but, and then Glenn mentioned the Aqua Conference. I'm hoping to see some or all of you at our reception on Wednesday night. Look forward to that.
Be there.
Thank you.
Thank you. San Diego County Water Authority, Director Evans.
Thank you. The final meeting for the year is tomorrow, but there are a few things I'd like to share with you. First of all, I know you've probably already heard the news that Sandy Curl was chosen as our GM, and we just have to vote tomorrow on the contract. But I wanted to say that during the interview process, I thought that she did an exceptional job of stepping forward as her own self and with real goals for the Water Authority that will make a nice transition from the, whatever we want to call it, the legacy that Maureen Stapleton left into something new. She has some interesting approaches. I think she'll be good. Dan Denham also interviewed, and he was excellent. He's just a little, not quite experienced enough, I think, to step into it, but both of them had such mutual respect for each other in interviews. I think the Water Authority's got a great team with them moving forward. So that was exciting.
Do you think she'll write a check?
I think there's a possibility she'll be more open to negotiating. I think in some ways afterwards you sort of got the feeling she very seriously took the words, "You're interim acting, don't make any decisions." I really think that's where she stood. and hopefully, I think her approach will be very different. Now, how much or what will happen there, I don't know, but I'm hoping it will be better. On the litigation with Met, there's been, and that's a big session tomorrow in closed session, but I do want to encourage us to feel positive about the sincere effort to come to some settlement. Once again, it's always a little bit of give and take, and who's willing to let their pride be bruised a bit. But I feel it's a very sincere effort, and a lot of people really want to move forward. And there's a few other things, coming out, that's coming out in future plans that I think put a different slant on things, so that's good. And then I mentioned at the last meeting, I think, about the TSAR. We're voting on that tomorrow. I'm pretty sure the Fiscal Sustainability Task Force has presented it as it will become permanent. It will be called SAWR with no T. It will be a 5-year program, permanent, but in 5 years it will be reviewed again along with the urban management plan, make sure it's working, and they will be putting in criteria for new participants. And one of the things they're looking at is that always that concern about who's funding or subsidizing whoever. So one of the things they're looking at was that they would use property tax revenue, since that's not held to the Prop 26. So they're talking about finding a way to put money aside so that if at some time the MWD supplies don't meet what the demand is, it will be paid for out of property tax revenue and not someone in the other category subsidizing others. So we're going to finalize it, but that's where that's coming from. So that was all pretty exciting. And that's it. Thank you.
That's it.
Are you
Thank
okay, Mike?
I'm just thinking current property tax revenue or future proposed property additional?
Oh, it's, what they're proposing is this, so we're going to look at it, and then we'll see if it's,
Okay.
where it really goes. But I think it's an interesting look.
Encino Wastewater Authority, Mr. Hernandez.
We had our meeting earlier this month. Already reported.
And the same with Policy and Finance, already reported. Standing committees,
Finance meets on Monday.
Finance meets on Monday. Do we have any other committees? Don't think so. Not yet. Okay, Director's reports on travel, conference, seminars. Let's start with Mr. Hernandez.
I attended the water conference yesterday and heard some, I think for the first time, perhaps some encouraging news about the Salton Sea. Encouraging in that at least the people involved are talking with each other, and there is some consensus in what potentially could happen. Long-term project. I'm not sure that it'll ever get back to the heyday that it was, whenever the heyday was. But it was an interesting conference.
Thank you. Director Sinello.
Yep, I attended the same meeting here. I'll pull up my notes here. And the presentation was from the general manager of the Salton Sea Authority, Phil Rosentrader. Don't know if I'm saying that right. What was interesting, in addition to what Director Hernandez mentioned, is that it's the first time I saw some sort of kind of specific plan of action that they might take, and it includes what they call creating a perimeter lake with this berm and levee system, and basically creating this clean, fresh lake that's like a perimeter around this wasteland of what it is now. And so it wasn't really clear of like what that might solve or not solve, but it was interesting. And at least they have a plan versus just trying to always fight with the different groups and agencies involved with the Salton Sea, and always trying to wrangle more money from the state and the feds. So.
Director Elthar.
Yeah, I attended the same meeting of the Council of Water Utilities yesterday. Yeah, the interesting project that's been laid out. what was interesting to me is that the costliest alternative is do nothing, and that's about $70 billion in impacts to things like human health and additional damage to the environment and the flyaway that the birds use. So, interesting presentation.
Director Evans?
I was also at that meeting at Kawu, and I thought two interesting things about it. I agree with all of you that they finally look like they have a plan and are moving forward, and the perimeter lake looks like an actual viable process if we can get the money together to do it. But I thought it was interesting how they're really working to make as much of it a revenue source as well. So they want to make the perimeter lake, not just that it'll be good for habitat, but that then it will be good for actual recreation. Not that will ever be the heyday it was at the start, but that was encouraging. And I think Craig made a very interesting, referred to when they said it would be $70 billion to leave it as it is and do nothing. And what fascinated me most was when they put that slide up with all the little dots where how far out the air pollution goes. And it's not just about right there. It goes way, 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 way out. So there's a lot of people in a lot of places that are impacted by it, but we don't think about it. So that I thought was good. And if we can just get the state to let go of the money that it promised, it might happen. It was a good meeting, though. Thank you.
Okay, other business, we already mentioned the Casa Winter Conference, the week after Thanksgiving. Director's comments on future agenda items. Anyone have, yeah, Director Hernandez?
Yes, excuse me, did we resolve the travel issue with our San Diego conference coming up?
No.
So if I plan to use an Airbnb, that would be on me solely. I can't put in a claim to offset any back and forth that may take place?
In general, yes. So, but I think if I'd have to have a conversation with General Counsel Gilpin, but I think there's a way to partially defray the cost to pay for costs you would have otherwise incurred.
All right, if you would, because I've already booked the Airbnb.
Yeah.
And then if at our next meeting, we could bring that back formally so that we all can know what's going on, I'd be happy with that. And I think we have the plastic things coming up. I'd like to see that in a very near agenda, and also the septic study.
Okay.
Thank you.
Director Evans?
It's not really for a future agenda. I just would like to say to my fellow board members that, as you know, I do need to take time to talk with each of you about appointments and what you're interested in for next year. I was hoping to do that from Aqua Conference on. I'm not sure when the first meeting's going to be, when that happens, since we keep in December, or will I do it in January?
It'll probably be at the meeting on December 11th.
December 11th is for sure.
Well, there's going to be a meeting on December 11th. I don't believe it needs to be a regular meeting to do committee appointments.
Okay.
So we could do that at the December 11th meeting.
That's what I wanted to check. So I'd really like to talk with each of you individually, so I'll work a way to set that up with you. And maybe some of you I'll catch you at the conference as well.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. If that's it, I'm going to close the meeting and reopen immediately the closed session meeting, re-adjourn the closed session meeting. Thank you very much for coming, one and all.
Happy holidays.